back to another video. So in this video, we are going to discuss about the routes and routing. So with the Cisco SD-WAN, we do have different types of routes. One is OMP routes, TLOC, transport location locks, TLOC routes, and the service routes. Now, what are the OMP routes? So sometimes referred to as a virtual routes, network prefixes that provide connectivity services to data centers, branches, or any other endpoints in the SD-WAN fabric. OMP routes will resolve the next hop to TLOC route. Now, so what is this, the whole fabric now? Everything, all the devices are connected to this fabric now, right? Now this fabric, in here we do have a vSmart, and vSmart gets all the routes. And it is learning all the routes via this fabric. This fabric is known as the OMP routes. So I think OMP full form is Overlay Management Protocol. Let me verify that one. Yep, Overlay Management Protocol. So why it is Overlay Management? Because the routes, everyone has tunnel connected to their controllers. So let's take an example of branch 1. So if I go to the branch 1, and if I say that show control connections, now you see that it is showing me that this particular device is connected to the vSmart via the MPLS, via the business internet, and connected to vBond via the MPLS and business internet. But vManage, it's only connecting over the business internet. So it is having some connection to all the controllers. Okay. So the branch 1 is now sharing the routes to the vSmart. So when it is being inserted into the SD-WAN fabric, that is known as the OMP routes. Okay, so these routes are known as the OMP routes. So how to check the OMP routes? Let's go back to the branch, and if I say that show OMP routes in a tabular form, I should get all the routes receiving from different VPNs, VPN 10, 20, and 40. I should see all the routes. Okay, so those are the OMP routes. Coming to the transport location route, the transport location is the identifier that ties an OMP route to a physical location. The TLOC is the only IP address that is known and reachable from the underlying network. Now, TLOC is very much interesting now. TLOC consists of system IP, and it also consists of the encapsulation. It also consists of the color. So let's take an example that branch 1 wants to communicate with branch 2. So usually how the routes will be looking like, if I want to go from VPN 10 to VPN 10 of branch 2. So the routes will be like, okay, I want to go to 10.10.202.0/24. The next hop should be like an IP address 220.100.1.202, for example, and 202 to the 212. If it is going via the MPLS, it should be 172.168, 100.202, or 212. But if you go back to the routing table now, same routing table, if I want to go to the 10.10.202 network, so it is saying that the next hop is the TLOC IP. It's not saying me that it is going via the public IP address, it is saying me that it is been TLOC IP. So instead of SD-WAN, how it is routing is that if you want to go to this particular IP subnet, you go to 100.0.0.202 or 212. But it is not saying that it should go via the public IP address. That's how the SD-WAN is being designed. Now, this TLOC is responsible for you providing that underlying information. The TLOC will be bind to the underlying public IP address. So it will say like, okay, this one is the business internet color, okay, and it is having an IPsec tunnel, and the next hop is been tied to. That means the branch one we are talking that is tied to 220.100.1.201. This is been tied to this public IP address. Now, underlyingly, branch 1 is now creating a tunnel to the branch 2. It has an IPsec tunnel. It will look for this tunnel. It says that yes, I do have the system IP tunnel to branch 2 over 100.0.202. So it's how things are working. It's a little bit complex to understand, but how things are mapped, that's what we have to understand. We are not mapping the interfaces to the public IP address. We are mapping to the TLOC IP address. And TLOC is being tied to the public IP address of the particular site interface. And since it is a mesh configuration now, so all the routes should be, all the devices should have their tunnel formed with the respective devices, all of the branches, making it as a one hop stop. And now I do have two different ways to go to the branch 2 for this prefix. So one is via the business color, another one is the MPLS. If I'm going with the branch to device 1, there is also branch to device 2. That means two paths on this way, two paths on this way, total four paths I am learning. So if I go back to my same routing table over here, you see that I'm learning 1, 2, 3, 4. Same prefix, I'm learning with both the devices and over MPLS and the business internets. And also if I say that show BFD sessions in a tabular form, I should see that BFD sessions going to their respective IP address. Now, here you see that system IP will be 202 and it has the BFD session with MPLS, okay, to the MPLS, and this is the IP address which they are forming on. So underlyingly, TLOC IP address is being binded to the local public IP address of that device, and it knows that it has a tunnel with the particular site which is up and running, and they are different colors over here. Okay, so that's what the it is referring to. Whenever we are looking up routes with the TLOC should be resolvable. So TLOC resolving means it is making sure that it is able to communicate with the branch 2 device over the MPLS and over the business internet. Simply, it is able to communicate with the public IP address of the branch 2 from the branch 1. Once this branch 2 is able to communicate and the TLOC IP address is being resolved, that means identification is good, IPsec tunnel has been formed, then it will install in your routing table. Now another thing is that if you go back to the routing table now, if you see that in the show OMP routes, whenever the routes which says that CIR, that means chosen, C for chosen, I for install, and R for resolve. So that means it is been resolving, it is able to resolve that subnet, whatever the subnet it is trying to reach. So that's why it has install in its routing table, OMP table. Sometimes you will see that it is invalid and U, that means invalid. It is not able to resolve the TLOC, so that's why it will make that route as an invalid route. Okay. Now let's go with the show TLOC um, IP routes tab. Now this is also an actual routing table now. OMP table is the one which you're getting from the SD-wan fabric. But whenever the router looks for the data to be forwarded, data packets, it will look into its routing table that is show IP routes. So if it is installed over here, so you see that it is installing the routes which are learning from the OMP, which are directly connected and statically connected, and it is installing because it is able to resolve. So if it is saying that it is resolved on the OMP, then it will install in its routing table and you are able to see the next hop. It is not a public IP address, it is the TLOC IP address. always. So underlyingly, TLOC will be resolved to each public IP address, so they are able to reach it to the public IP address simply. Now coming to the service routes. Service routes are identified as a SD-WAN overlay. These routes identify the service physical location. For example, if you remember, we already had a discussion about if I want to place a service between branch 1 and branch 2, should go not go directly but via the firewall, right? So my requirement is that whenever the branch 1 is trying to communicate with branch 2, it should go to the data center 1, go to the firewall, inspect the traffic and go back to the branch 2. So now this is a service which is provided by the data center 1. So once the service has been advertised, it will propagate these details to the vSmart. So once the vSmart has the information, you create a policy. Once you create a policy, then vSmart is responsible to push the policies to the respective devices and inform them that whenever you're trying to communicate these subnets, you have to go via the firewall. So for currently I don't advertise anything, so I should not see show MP services, service firewall, no entries found. So there I have no firewall policies going on or services going on. If I remove the firewall, I don't have any services. You see that I don't have. It's currently showing me the service VPN, that is the VPN 10, 20 and 40 which we created. But apart from that, I don't have any other IPS or firewall services routes have been advertised yet. So when we are going to do that service chaining, definitely we will see how it is being advertised. Now, we already discussed about that one. OMP sites edge. Each WAN edge at the site will advertise routes to the vSmart controllers, updates to the traditional routing table, so and so. We have already looked into that one. TLOC also we have advertised, and this is an example like TLOC. What is the system IP, what is the color, and what is the IPsec, and what will be the WAN IP address that is bind to that particular. So your TLOC is bind to that public IP address. So if the tunnel is been formed between branch 1 and branch 2 on that public IP address, that TLOC is been resolvable. Otherwise, it will be invalid. And service route, we already discussed about that one for a specific service. For the rest of the overlay, like going from branch 1 and branch 2, we took an example. If they want to communicate with each other, they have to go via the firewall. So this would be the best examples for the service route. So whenever the local site 1 wants to communicate with 2, they will go via the firewall or the load balancer or the IDP or IPS, and they are able to reach. So we have to steer that. We have to create a policy for that one. So I hope this was informative for you, and thank you.